why do you think that the whale continues to loom so large in human imagination, across geographies, generation, cultures?
Hmm. I think it gets back to something that's deeply uncanny about whale species, that they are both like us and nothing like us.
Mhm.
They're mammalian, warm-blooded animals, social, playful. They suckle their young. They have very complex social structures, potentially even um, languages and dialects, as recent analysis of whale song is proving. So in those ways, they're very much like us, and yet they live on dimensions and in environments that are nothing like our own, both bodily, physical dimensions, just sheer size of a blue whale, and also the length of their migrations, the distance that they communicate over. Some of them live in such deep black oceans that they inhabit a totally different sensory world, one that's defined by bioacoustics. And I think there's something wonderful about being kind of minified and mystified by the whale. There's a sense of that. They're both wonderfully earthbound and also entirely other. And that combination has always had a great grip on the human imagination.
I love that. I also love the idea of writing about whales, which are deeply wild and almost sinister, and then writing about pets. And I love the what you said about that we've taken the wildness out of them. I really
Mhm.
um so something that I've often thought about when it comes to the whale is the ability that this animal also has of bringing people together.
Mm.
Probably because of what we project onto it, but there's always this idea of like gathering for the whale, whether it's, in the first chapter in the introduction of your book where you talk about this beaching of this whale, and in the 70s when there was such a huge movement of people that came together to save the whale, but in the end it was really like a movement about, ecological degradation and bringing attention to that. And um I want to know, why do you think there is, or not even why, but what is it that brings this sense of communion? Do you think it is what you just said now, which is, that we feel so, that they're so like us but so unlike us, so there is this like dichotomy? But I could say that about a lot of animals in a way.
Mm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also the sense of nature's kind of sovereignty and autonomy, and the idea that there are animals on these dimensions living out beyond the ken of human perception, in the deep oceans. And there are species of whales that we only know from a handful of bones. These are animals that potentially are as big as buses, and we have very scant scientific specimens that have been tested to show that they're novel species. So yeah, it suggests as well, increasingly in the climate era where we feel like all parameters are drawn in close by the sense that everything that was wild has become human and touched by the human, because, of course, of global change on vast dimensions, CO2 emissions to not to mention ocean acidification, etc. So, we're changing the world on this um, molecular level, and we're also changing the world on the sort of mass scale as well of the weather. And so, yeah, I think there's something magic about knowing that there are large animals out there that disregard us to some degree. Um, and increasingly, a lot of the project of this book as well was to describe that we may have saved the whale. We may have, in the sense of the cessation of whaling, that great triumph in the 80s. But ultimately, the context in which the whale lives now is sonically different, chemically different, is scoped by the warming seas. So we may have saved it, but we haven't exactly preserved the conditions for its freedom. Um, yeah, and I think that that draws us to a different kind of moral accountability. And I mean, maybe that we have that accountability anyway, but it's just kind of hard to feel it for, you know, an ice shelf collapsing, which I mean is a dramatic and hollowing thing to witness, but it's unfelt by, there's something kind of sensory about the whale and the whale's body. And the story of the whale eating the plastic just feels so horrifying and humiliating that, yeah, I think we don't exactly have a protocol for how to grieve those events yet. It's just emerging, kind of what are the psychological ways that we can collect around that grief. So yeah, there are good forms of collectivity that coalesce around the whale. There's some
Mhm.
fascinating things with ecotourism and I guess yeah, the sense of like drawn together into political purpose. But there are also some really damaging ways of
Mhm.
gathering around the whale. And so one example I give in the book is of this scenario where not a whale, but a dolphin had washed up, and so many people were eager to have photos taken with it that they overtouched it and essentially did such damage to this animal that it perished. Um, and in that part of the book, I'm trying to kind of like hold off my knee-jerk feeling of disgust and really sort of sit with that feeling and ask what's going on there? Like why isn't there a healthy form of grief for this kind of event? Why is it so pathological? Um, yeah, yeah. So I think these things are sort of, it's a world in its becoming. It's not
Mhm.
completely kind of, yeah, publicly settled.